Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. And good morning. Now, show of hands if you recognize that song. All right, I see a decent showing, so I'm going to ask you to say the last part of the name with me. That was I Can't Drive 55. There we go, thank you, by Sammy Hagar. The song came out in 1984, and admittedly, that was a bit before my time, but I'm given to understand that it was a time when the national speed limit was 55 miles per hour. Now, that may seem a bit quaint compared to what we see on some highways today, but I think we can all agree that at least we got a great song out of it. Now, we've all felt Sammy's frustration while sitting in traffic and seeing this view. And usually, jams like this are because an accident happened. Did you know that the average driver files a collision claim once every 18 years? That means most drivers will have 3 or 4 accidents in their lifetime. But this statistic doesn't address the fact that a lot of drivers are on the road as part of their job. Almost a third of jobs require some amount of driving. And being on the road is one of the riskiest parts of many jobs. The workers' comp system has significant exposure to motor vehicle accidents. During this session, you'll see why motor vehicle accidents are worth paying close attention to. Yesterday, Donna showed us that the workers' comp system remains healthy overall. But motor vehicle accidents tell a different story, and they remain an area of opportunity for improvement. For the past 20 or so years, the share of lost time claims due to a motor vehicle crash has remained around 5%, though it has gone up a bit. We see an increase in the 20-teens, followed by a dip during the COVID pandemic. This fluctuation is something we'll spend more time on later in the session. But for now, the thing to know is that while motor vehicle accidents are 5% of claims, they account for 10% of their lost dollars. And this share of dollars has also grown in the past 20 years. Motor vehicle crashes are significantly more severe than the average lost time claim. But how much more exactly? Here we have the average cost of a lost time claim by cause of injury. Motor vehicle accidents are the most expensive type of claim. They cost more than $100,000 on average, and that's $30,000 more than the next costliest cause of injury. Motor vehicle claims cost 70% more than the average lost time claim. There's just something different about these accidents. Let's get a feel for why we see this significant cost differential. Large losses are certainly part of the story. When we look at the share of claims over $1 million due to motor vehicle accidents, it's more than tripled in the last 2 decades. And the share of losses has also grown during this time. Motor vehicle accidents account for about $1 in $5 of loss on claims costing at least $1 million. But a claim doesn't have to reach 7 figures to have an impact. For example, when a worker is killed in an accident, in addition to the devastating effect on families and loved ones, the claim costs about $400,000 on average. When we look at fatal claims summarized by cause of injury, motor vehicle accidents are the #1 cause of work fatalities. In fact, they account for twice as many worker deaths as the next highest cause. 4 out of every 10 fatalities in the workers' compensation system are caused by a motor vehicle crash. Clearly, motor vehicle accidents demand our attention. And during the remainder of this session, I'm going to walk you through 3 things. First, the reasons that motor vehicle claims cost so much more. Second, the high-level trend in motor vehicle accident frequency. And third, the frequency of motor vehicle accidents for a few specific jobs. Now let's see why motor vehicle claims cost 70% more. Here you see in green the average severity for motor vehicle claims over time. The severity for all lost time claims is shown for comparison in the pink dashed line. The differential between them depends on the year, but stays in the range of 70 to 90%. And this difference doesn't seem to be getting any smaller over time. When we look at indemnity and medical severity separately to see which drives the overall cost disparity, we see that both are higher for motor vehicle claims, although the difference is greater on the medical side. To understand the types of motor vehicle claims we're dealing with, we broke down the causes of these accidents. Most frequent is a collision with another vehicle, which accounts for almost half of these claims that result in a lost time claim. The other category here includes injuries due to a sudden start or stop. Think of coming into contact with the interior of the vehicle or being hit by its contents like a toolbox. It's also notable that the struck category here accounts for 15% of motor vehicle claims. This is when the injured worker was a pedestrian hit by a vehicle. What do the collision and struck accidents have in common? Typically, the presence of a third party. Between these two categories, that's over half of motor vehicle claims that may involve another driver. And when you have a third party, you have the potential for subrogation. We see that 1 in 4 motor vehicle lost time claims experiences a subrogation recovery. Compared to other claims, a motor vehicle accident is 10 times as likely to result in subrogation. And even with this high rate of recoveries, motor vehicle claims still cost 70% more on average. What makes these claims so costly is energy. There is much more energy involved in the average motor vehicle crash than the typical industrial accident. It comes down to fundamental physics. A heavy vehicle moving fast has destructive potential unlike almost anything else in the workers' compensation system. Think about 2 crashes, one at 20 miles per hour and another going 40 miles per hour. Despite being only twice as fast, this second collision packs 4 times the punch as the first. That's because energy depends more on speed than the weight of a vehicle. And speed is important because it's something the driver can control to an extent. Now let's see how medical costs compare for motor vehicle accidents, knowing about the unusually high energy involved. One reason these claims cost more is they're more likely to injure a worker in multiple places. In fact, that's what happens in almost 1 out of 3 motor vehicle accidents that resulted in a lost time claim. Compared to other industrial accidents, crashes are more than twice as likely to cause workers multiple injuries. Using our medical data, we see that people get hurt most frequently in the neck, lumbar spine or lower back, and shoulder. Together, these account for more than half of multiple injury claims. And this makes sense. In a car crash, our neck and lower back are most at risk of whiplash, but our shoulders can also be hurt by that force. Bracing against the steering wheel and even pressure from the seatbelt can also injure our shoulders. Now that we've seen where workers tend to get hurt in a crash, let's look at how the cost to treat these injuries stack up. The size of the bubble here tells us how common these motor vehicle injuries are, while the height of the bubble represents the average treatment cost for motor vehicle claims. The pink line shows the corresponding cost for all lost time claims. Compared to the average lost time claim, foot, ankle, and chest injuries cost twice as much to treat for motor vehicle accidents. Injuries to the arms and head cost even more than that. And treatment for hip and leg injuries cost 3 to 4 times more for motor vehicle claims. Again, it comes back to energy and the devastating force that people endure in a crash. So what drives treatment costs for workers with hip and leg injuries due to a motor vehicle accident? When we break down the medical payments by category, we see that facilities are the primary driver. This category includes when workers are treated in a hospital or surgical center. Of these services, the one with the biggest impact on costs is when the injured worker receives care in an inpatient setting. In blue here, we have the contribution to the average treatment costs for motor vehicle claims coming from inpatient care. This alone accounts for half the total costs to treat the average hip and leg injuries due to a crash. Traumatic injuries like these can have wide-ranging effects on our bodies and often require intensive care. And because the leg and hip are complex structures that also have to support our weight, surgery may be necessary, which can lengthen the worker's inpatient stay. And for many injuries, the inpatient contribution to average costs is 2 to 5 times higher for motor vehicle claims than it is for all lost time accidents. This reinforces the point that motor vehicle crashes are uniquely damaging to workers, requiring extended inpatient stays for the worst injuries. Let's recap why motor vehicle claims cost more on average. It starts with the unique high-energy nature of these accidents. They frequently cause multiple injuries to workers, and while areas that are prone to injury in a car accident, like the neck and lower back, aren't especially costly to treat, it adds up when workers are hurt in multiple places. Additionally, for the head, chest, and lower extremities, injuries resulting from a crash can be much more harmful, and thus more costly to treat. Crashes also stand out in their ability to cause injury to multiple workers at once. 1 in 2 claims where co-workers were injured were caused by motor vehicle accidents. And a crash is 10 times as likely to involve co-workers having claims as the average workplace accident. This all underscores the importance of preventing these accidents from occurring. So let's look at how their frequency has changed over time. First, we see the frequency of all lost time claims, which has declined consistently for the past 20 years for the most part. Let's stop at 2019 for now to focus on what was happening before the pandemic. In a moment, we'll see what happened more recently. But first, let's check out the frequency of motor vehicle claims, which we see here in green. Up until 2012, it tracked fairly well with the overall frequency trend. But from 2012 to 2019, overall frequency continued to improve, but the frequency of motor vehicle accidents actually got worse. What happened there? For one thing, smartphones haven't helped. By 2012, almost 90% of adults already owned a cell phone, but most of these phones had limited functionality. Mr. Isaacson talked to us about innovation and the iPhone, and everything changed when the iPhone was introduced. It included apps for texting, video, email, and more. Everything on demand, but also while you're driving. And consumer adoption of smartphones quickly took off. Ownership surged to nearly 80% by 2016 and has continued to climb. Today, 9 out of 10 adults own a smartphone in the US. We've all seen this guy on the road, right? And some of those red lights seem to take forever, making it really tempting to knock out just a few emails. But it's really not worth it. Distracted driving causes almost a third of traffic fatalities, and smartphones are the top source of distraction. And 1 in 3 of all crashes involve a driver who was using their phone in the minute before the crash. Using smartphones while driving is a danger to everyone on the road, and there's no question it has contributed to the stubborn frequency of motor vehicle claims. By now, most states have passed laws against texting while driving, and more than half of states prohibit handheld cell phone use while driving altogether. And while these laws may sound promising, a joint study by the Governor's Highway Safety Association and Cambridge Mobile Telematics found that while hands-free phone laws reduce usage in the initial few months after they're implemented, this reduction eases as time passes and public awareness fades. And as states have banned talking on the phone while driving, more people are connecting their phones to their vehicle's infotainment systems, which I think we can all agree are themselves a distraction. The good news is that there is technology with the potential to reinforce good behaviors around distracted driving, and in doing so, improve safety. And that's a topic we'll touch on shortly. But in the meantime, let's see some other reasons why motor vehicle accident frequency hasn't improved. All that talk about cell phones may have reminded you of the younger drivers in your life. Newer drivers are less experienced and more likely to have an accident. What we see here is the number of licensed drivers for every 1,000 people in the population. During the Great Recession, many young people put off getting their licenses because the job outlook was less promising. But as the economy picked up, there was an increase in newly licensed drivers beginning in 2014 and lasting through 2017. And even though many of these newly licensed drivers were still in school, having more of them on the road made it less safe for those driving on the job. After all, it's right around this time when we saw motor vehicle accident frequency increase notably. During COVID, it was difficult to get a license, and you had less need to. But then in 2021, more new drivers took to the roads, and the upward trend has continued since then. But this measure doesn't only reflect new drivers. If older people are continuing to drive when they weren't before, that could also be captured in this metric. And we know that these drivers present their own set of challenges. When the population of drivers becomes less safe overall, it's more hazardous to drive for work, and that impacts the frequency of motor vehicle accidents for workers' compensation. We've all seen car accidents on our way to or from work, and rush hour is one of the most dangerous times to be on the road. The average commute time increased during the 2010s, with larger increases seen as gas prices dropped in 2014 and 15. With gas more affordable and the economy going strong, people simply may have been more willing to take jobs further from home. The length of the average commute peaked in 2019 before falling during the pandemic. It's recovered since then, but still remains below that 2019 level. It could be that workers with the longest commute times were more likely to permanently transition to remote work. But for everyone else, the average commute is close to its all-time high. And while an accident during your trip to or from work typically isn't compensable under workers' comp, there are plenty of people driving in the course of their job during these same hours. More people commuting and for longer means more exposure to motor vehicle accidents for these workers. People are also driving more in general. Total miles traveled remained depressed coming out of the Great Recession. But then driving picked up in 2014, 15, and 16 as gas prices dropped and there was a rush of new drivers. Driving dipped during COVID, but has since recovered. Total miles are shown through 2023 here, where they remain below the 2019 level, but it's estimated that last year, total miles surpassed that level and reached a new high water mark. So these days, we're driving more than ever in total, even though some of us don't commute anymore. So it was a combination of factors: distracted driving, more new drivers, and more road congestion, to name a few, that made driving less safe and pushed up the frequency of motor vehicle accidents after 2012. Plus, the sorts of initiatives that are helping to reduce frequency on work sites during this time, think of things like automation, robotics, and safety programs, are difficult to replicate on the road. Out on the highways and streets, there are more factors outside of the employer's control, especially the other drivers. So we haven't seen improvement in motor vehicle accident frequency since 2012 until COVID, when restrictions and a large shift to remote work brought the frequency of motor vehicle accidents down by 15 percentage points. That's more than double the reduction seen in overall frequency during the pandemic. In 2021, there was a transition to the new normal, and with it, a resurgence in claims. Frequency for all lost time claims bounced back, but as of 2022, it looks to be continuing its long-term decline as if COVID never happened. In contrast, the frequency of motor vehicle accidents remains 10 percentage points below where it was before the pandemic. But the combination of the flat change in the latest year and the data we have so far for 2023 indicates that motor vehicle crash frequency may remain stubbornly flat going forward. Now, these claims come from a variety of jobs, some involving more driving than others. Here we see the top 30 workers' comp class codes by overall lost time claims, regardless of cause of injury. Each group is represented by a dot, and the height of that dot shows the portion of lost time claims in that class caused by a motor vehicle accident. This amount varies from less than 1% up to almost 20% for these workers. The average for all classes beyond the 30 shown here is just over 5%. The three jobs with the highest share of claims due to motor vehicle accidents are salespeople, truck drivers, and other drivers. It's no surprise then that these three classes are also the top 3 contributors to the overall number of motor vehicle lost time claims. But the number 4 contributor may surprise you. For clerical office workers, only 5% of their lost time claims are due to a motor vehicle accident. But this class is so popular that it's still the 4th largest contributor to the overall number of motor vehicle lost time claims. So let's look at how frequency has changed over time for these 4 groups of workers. First, we have salespeople. This class consists of those who routinely travel to conduct business, including sales and advertising. They drive a lot, and almost 20% of their lost time claims are from motor vehicle accidents. On the left, we see this group's frequency of motor vehicle claims in green and all claims in pink over the last decade. And on the right, for comparison, we have the frequencies for all classes. Motor vehicle accident frequency for salespeople dropped significantly in 2020 and remains at that lower level. It could be that the nature of this job simply changed coming out of the pandemic, and these workers aren't driving as much now. But aside from that drop in 2020, motor vehicle frequency for these workers has generally been flat over the last decade. Next, we have the trucking industry. This is another group of people with significant exposure to motor vehicle accidents, as most of them drive large trucks for a living. Trucking's motor vehicle accident frequency declined sharply in 2018, 19, and 20, and hasn't increased since then. While overall frequency has increased for these workers since the pandemic, the frequency of motor vehicle accidents has stayed down. This is encouraging, and there's more to say about trucking. But before we do, let's see another of the biggest groups when it comes to motor vehicle claims: drivers. This group includes other people who routinely drive, such as those who make deliveries for restaurants. This is another group for whom driving is essential to their job. For these workers, the frequency trends for motor vehicle claims and all claims track closely, both dropping during 2020 and then returning during 2021. The motor vehicle trend for drivers looks to be flat over the last decade. And last, we have clerical office workers. These folks are different from the previous three groups in that their jobs do not primarily involve driving. But there may be incidental driving, such as to meetings or from one office to another. For this group, the frequency of both all claims and motor vehicle accidents fell significantly in 2020. Workers in this class were more likely to go remote during the pandemic, and many probably still are. Yet while the frequency of all claims has stayed down for this group, the frequency of motor vehicle accidents is rebounding. This draws into question the degree to which remote work will reduce motor vehicle claims in the long run. Among motor vehicle lost time claims, these classes are the top 4 contributors. And trucking is the only one to have seen sustained improvement in motor vehicle accident frequency in the years leading up to COVID, and it's also the only one for which the frequency of crashes is trending lower than the frequency of all claims in recent years. What might be accounting for this improvement? For one thing, there are several recent regulations that may have contributed to better safety in the trucking industry. For example, new truck tractors are now required to come equipped with electronic stability control. This technology makes rollovers and other forms of loss of control less frequent. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety estimates that this feature alone can prevent 1 in 5 large truck crashes that result in moderate to serious injury, and 11% of those resulting in fatalities. And on the subject of technology, trucking companies and their drivers now have to use electronic logging devices to keep driving records. These devices connect with the truck to automatically track driving time and other information about the vehicle, like engine data. This regulation was intended to help address driver fatigue and also streamline compliance with hours of service rules. And speaking of compliance, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration now requires employers to use its Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse to report and identify violations annually. This centralized and standardized important safety information. And as of recently, the requirement extends to states to having to check the clearinghouse before issuing or renewing a commercial driver's license. But regulations are far from the whole story. Trucking businesses are going beyond the requirements to proactively improve safety. Thanks to advances in logistics, employers have more oversight of deliveries and greater flexibility in adapting to changes. For example, the required electronic logging devices are being integrated with sensors so that businesses can monitor vehicle diagnostics in real time to better detect performance issues and more efficiently maintain vehicles, which helps prevent crashes due to mechanical failure or wear. And when you throw GPS tracking into the mix, employers can identify upcoming hazards and guide drivers through unfamiliar routes, helping them focus on safe operation of the vehicle. But increased oversight of driving doesn't stop there. Dash cameras that face in and out are being leveraged to provide two major benefits. The first is recording activity outside the truck, which can be helpful in pursuing subrogation after an accident occurs. But the other benefit is monitoring the driver to reinforce safe driving habits. Machine vision software, powered by AI, can detect at-risk driver behavior like distracted or drowsy driving and provide immediate feedback. This software can also provide coaching when speeding or hard braking is detected to help develop better driver habits and improve safety. Embracing telematics has helped the trucking industry sustain a lower frequency of motor vehicle accidents. But there is another technology with the potential to bring about even bigger change. And it's closer than you may think. We've been hearing for over a decade now that autonomous vehicles are coming. Tracy highlighted Waymo yesterday, and maybe you've taken a ride in one of their cars. But you probably didn't realize that self-driving trucks are already on the highway. Chances are, someone in this room has driven next to one, as these trucks have been delivering freight on test runs across the country for several years now. It's a scary thought, at least to me. During this testing phase, a safety driver has been in the cab to take over in case of something unexpected. But earlier this year, trucks began driving without a person present on private roads in Texas. And another company just announced that its trucks have begun driving without a person present between Dallas and Houston. The last major hurdle for this technology to overcome is cold weather conditions, which is one reason self-driving trucks have been rolling out in Texas first. Autonomous trucks have the potential to be a major disruptor for workers' compensation. Trucking is currently the #1 class in terms of workers' comp premium. And in addition to making trucking safer, these vehicles have the potential to reduce the frequency of accidents for the other drivers on the road, many of whom are driving for work. While it remains to be seen just when self-driving trucks will gain widespread adoption, this technology is certainly something to monitor, as it has the potential to be a game changer. In the meantime, motor vehicle accidents remain a challenge for the system. These claims cost 70% more on average. This is because the high speed and energy involved tends to result in workers sustaining multiple injuries, some especially severe. And even though workplaces have gotten safer, driving hasn't. Motor vehicle accident frequency has stayed flat. While there are fewer motor vehicle claims after the pandemic, the flat change in the latest year and the data we have so far for 2023 indicates the stubbornness in frequency for these claims may persist. And it remains to be seen whether remote work will have a lasting impact on motor vehicle accidents. The frequency trend by worker group varies, but one group that stands out is truck drivers. This is the class with the most premium and motor vehicle claims, and it had several years of frequency improvement. A focus on safety, from regulations to new technology, has played a role. And while autonomous vehicles may shake things up in the years to come, technology that's currently available, like telematics and dash cameras, have the potential to improve safety and get more workers home safely at the end of their day. And that's what it's all about. Keeping people safe on the job. As for myself, I think I'll be taking the train home. Thank you very much.